It's right here, signal in the sky. Gotta be making it to the scene of the crime. What I've been doing since that big Gotham night. Two-faced MC since I first made the scene. Smile like the Joker with the Mad magazine.
Hello and welcome to the Writer's Block, Episode 1, State of the Union, recorded live at the Mainframe Comic Con, brought to you by Hopscotch, the fine Scottish blend that brings out the kid in you. I am Rylend Grant. I didn't prepare him for that one. He's laughing about it. I am Rylend Grant, screenwriter, Ringo Award-winning creator of comics like Aberrant, Banjax, and The Jump. The man in the box to the right is...
David Avallone, screenwriter and comic book writer of, things. Bettie Page, Elvira, co-creator of Drawing Blood with Kevin Eastman. I've written Doc Savage, The Shadow, a bunch of old-timey stuff, you know.
Love it, dude. So we will get to our very distinguished guests in just a moment, but I think we should first take a moment here to set the table, right? Sure. Let them know what our show is all about, since it's the first episode, the first time anybody's listening to it or seeing it.
Yes. So I think for a lot of us comic book creators, the best thing about cons, which we're all missing right now, is hanging out with your peers and telling war stories and kicking around the state of the industry. And what Rylend and I wanted to do is recreate that, but without the thing of shouting over the loud music at a bar.
Yeah, and so what you'll find as the weeks go by is that there isn't going to be a real strict format here. Every week we're going to kind of bring together a small panel of writers, of course, but also artists, colorists, editors, the whole nine yards, and we will talk about anything that's going on in and around comics and sort of whatever else comes to mind. We are free associators here. But before we get started, thank you, Aaron Nabus, for the congratulations on our first episode.
Absolutely. We have some great guests today. Friends and Romans and countrymen who are great writers and fabulous human beings. Can we bring in Erica Schultz and David Walker? Nice. There we are. One big happy family. Live long and prosper, David.
Now, I'm sure you guys... I'm sure you guys heard in the waiting room, it's our first go at this. And so, we're still sort of, figuring our way around the curves in this. There was a lot of debate on this, but in my panel experience, I love that you can always see sometimes Avallone's wife will just kind of like cross in the background.
Do a pass by. I said,
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's so amazing. I love this at home stuff. But in my panel experience, I think it's always best to let the guests introduce themselves. You know you better than we know you. So let us know who you are, what you've done, and how you're feeling today.
I am. Well, I was waiting to see if David was going to go first, because he's like the A level here. I'm like the B plus. God,
where does that put me? D?
Yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
I'm F, but you have the A level hair out of the four of us.
Yes,
so.
I have the Pantene hair. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am Erica Schultz. I am a writer and editor. I've written Daredevil. I've written Revenge. I've written Hawkgirl for DC. My own series, Forgotten Home, is currently on Comixology Originals. It just got collected. I almost said last month, but it technically got collected in June. And I'm an editor at Mad Cave Studios, and I am a writing instructor at the Kubert School.
Awesome. David Walker, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, I needed a writing instructor when I was at the Kubert School. We didn't have that in those days. Well, my name's David Walker, and I'm a writer. I am co-writer of Bitter Root over at Image, co-writer of Young Justice and NAOMI at DC, but at Marvel I've written Power Man and Iron Fist, Nighthawk, Occupy Avengers, a few other things, and I've got my own little indie comic thing going on. Because working in comics isn't heartbreaking enough. I've got to self-publish too, and so that's what I do. And I teach part-time at Portland State University.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
I got my copy of The Hated a week ago, and it's excellent.
I sent it like a month ago.
I love it. Yeah, I know. Thank you, Donald Trump. But I love it.
This is real time. What's been going on with the post right here?
Yeah, I'm glad we could get a plug for the post office in here. But yeah, great alternate history, Civil War stuff. That's, as you know, right up my alley. And also, I can't launch a podcast without you being the first guest. So there's that too. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad I can be somebody's first something in a positive way, hopefully.
Right.
Well, and I think I think David has David Walker. They're always I can't do a podcast without multiple Davids. Seriously, the last time I did something like this, there were there 3 Davids or 4 Davids? I think there were 3 Davids, and we changed someone's name to David, so it was so everybody kind of had nicknames. But as David Walker was alluding to, strange times, right? And that is our topic, our food for thought here. Again, this is going to be unstructured, so hopefully that doesn't frustrate you. Again, this is us sitting around a table, at a bar after a con day and talking about kind of the State of the Union. But the strangest times ever, right? I'm going to go through a list here of all of the kind of kicks to the face and stomach and groin and wherever else the universe has decided to kick us lately. Well, I'm going to miss some.
Before you get started, this is a good time to take that drink if you have one with you.
Or 2 or 3. Yeah. So so we get hit with COVID. Then it's pencils down everywhere, right? Cons start getting canceled. People like me and I'm interested to hear how you guys have been affected here. We're having books shelved or delayed. Comic shops closed. Diamond holding company stocks.
It's called ransom is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, holding the ransom. That's a great thing.
Frank, so if we're being frank, it's called.
We're being frank.
Ransom is so polite. That's such a polite term for it. But
I'm trying, David. I'm trying to. I said I teach for the school. I'm trying to be, a role model.
Yes. Yeah. No, I get it. There's some words I would use that go beyond ransom, but the gist is there. Somebody owes me fucking money. That's all I know. So
a lot of people owe a lot of people money, and that's what we'll get into. Let me get through the list, and then we will just free associate and all this stuff. Because it goes on. It's that would be enough for any 10 people on a podcast, but it continues with us with Comicsgate, with Dynamite, with sexual harassment stuff, Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, the DC bloodbath, trouble at IDW, trouble everywhere, really. All the trouble that the 4 of us know about, but we can't talk about it on the air or in a convention setting, right? Creators like us moving in droves to Kickstarter is an interesting thing to kind of swerve into, right? And then the USPS trouble that's killing us all right now. I'm about to fulfill a Kickstarter, and I've just seen shipping in some cases double. Shipping delays, books that should have taken a couple of days to get somewhere taking a month or months, and creators getting boned in any and every way possible, be it financially, be it your opportunities disappearing, all of that. And so I have set the table. And so let me know, we each have our own story. How is this affecting you guys? And more importantly, how are you dealing? Right?
Thank you for this delicious shit dinner. That you
Scoop it up. Here's a spoon.
So tempting. The flies buzzing around.
Oh, I know. And as you alluded, there's all the stuff that we feel kind of okay talking about, and then there's all the stuff we've been told in confidence, and all the stuff that, well, how confident was that confidence? And was that a secret? And holy shit, that can't have been a secret.
And in the back of your mind, like NDA.
Yeah. I have to say, I've signed very few NDAs. Most of it is just, and the thing, there's stuff that has been public knowledge for years that people are pretending wasn't public knowledge. I'm thinking specifically of IDW's publisher for 1 week, who is now gone. Who I knew was an embezzler 10 years ago, or no, 5 years ago. But somehow they didn't. Nobody asked me. They asked.
Before you do anything, you gotta ask Avallone.
I think, I do know where some of the bodies are better. But yeah, God, there's so much. I could literally end my career at every single publisher in about 40 seconds of speech right now with everything about every individual. Because, to get to the worst part of this for me right at this exact second, when it was revealed a month ago that Dynamite had been working with Comicsgate, someone reached out to give me that news. I had not seen it yet on Twitter. And I went down every publisher and said, oh, so I should work with the people who did this, or I should work with the people who did that, or I should work with the people who coddled this sexual harasser for 10 years, or I should work with the people who coddled that sexual harasser for 10 years. It's, it's monkeys all the way down. It's bad. It's bad everywhere. And the thing that I always say as a codicil to all of that is, look, I'm sure the president of a cardboard factory in Duluth is also a scumbag. Like, it's not just us. It's not just our industry. It's people who own things and people with money will tend to abuse that privilege. So I don't think, especially Rylend and I did, all of us coming a little bit also from the film industry, not really a shining example of a clean corporate world.
I worked at a New York ad agency for 10 years.
There you go.
All right. Straight out of college, first job out of college, I was an assistant in a creative department at a New York ad agency. All right. So I was, cute 22-year-old, invited to client dinners because they liked to look at me. And that's not like an ego thing. I'm not saying that like, oh, look, because I made a joke about my hair earlier, but I'm saying like that was like, oh, let's invite Erica to the client dinner because the client thinks she's cute. Not let's invite Erica to the client dinner because she's smart and she's got good ideas. Right. But stupid 21-year-old me was like, oh my God, they really want to listen to my ideas. No, they want to play grab ass. Let's be honest.
So you were Peggy.
Mesmerized.
You were Peggy, essentially.
Mesmerized.
Yeah.
From Mad Men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I honestly, I couldn't watch that show because it triggered me. I could not watch that show.
Yeah. I can see where that would be the case. Yeah.
It was the hair.
No, in all honesty, I donate my hair every couple of years to a company that makes, there's a company called Locks of Love and they make wigs for cancer patients. So I grow my hair very long and then I chop it. And I was about to donate my hair before lockdown. So I haven't had a haircut since January and my hair is like bamboo. It just grows really, really long, really, really fast. So I'm sorry, David. You can have some of it if you want.
I could use it. I mean, mine does. What's the exact opposite of bamboo?
Chaparral.
Chaparral. But your mustache is way fuller than mine. So I have a very spotty mustache. So
it's all right. It's okay. Just work on it.
Glad we're keeping with the grooming. With the grooming part, I shaved my head early in COVID because I knew I couldn't get a haircut, and it's coming back in kind of a Timothy Dalton as Niles Calder thing, and I don't know how to do that. It's a little. If I have to be James Bond, I have to be old James Bond, apparently. But
I've had one haircut in 6 months. My wife gave it to me in the backyard. I think she did a pretty good job. Yeah, I think I'm looking pretty slick.
I will not allow my husband to come near me with scissors. I've cut his hair 2 or 3 times in this, and he looks great. He's not cutting my hair. Sorry. I'm like Samson. You cut my hair, my power's gone.
Sure. I have to tell a very quick aside about Samson. Do you know that? Have you read that story in the Bible?
1,000,000 years ago.
That is the funniest fucking story in the Bible because she asks him 3 times, and 3 times in a row, he tells her a lie, and then she does the thing, and then there are Philistine commandos in the room suddenly who attack him. He kills them, and he goes, what a crazy coincidence. And then the 4th time, he says, okay, it's my hair. Are you happy? It's my hair. And she cuts it, and suddenly another team of Philistine commandos are in the room, and he's like, why does this keep happening?
It's a total comic book.
Literally, it's like oh, if I wear gold-colored sandals, I lose all my powers. And she goes, oh, I have a pair of gold-colored sandals. Oh, hey, look, there's some guys with swords. And like literally, he is the dumbest man in the Bible. It takes the 4th time, and he still says, okay, it's my hair. Jesus, enough of this shit already. Anyway, sorry. I love that story. It was so ridiculous.
I think Bible Stories with David Avallone is another great
another podcast.
Yeah.
We'll get to
spin-off
that
program. Yeah,
so you know,
go ahead.
how are we surviving?
David, how are you surviving?
Any ideas?
It's been rough. Obviously, I was teach, and I was gonna I took the spring semester off from teaching because the convention season was coming up, and I had several big conventions and some pretty significant speaking engagements lined up. So I had I figured I had probably 6 or 7 months worth of income coming between the months of late March into, we'll say, early June, and all that went away. And and fortunately, I've been working as a freelancer for 20 something years now, close to 30 years actually, and so I've learned that the science of setting aside emergency money and prepping and knowing that you might hit a dry spell. And so the beginning of the pandemic was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be a dry spell for a little while. I was pretty optimistic in thinking that, like, at the very least, we would have New York Comic Con in October, which is always a good moneymaker for me. But as soon as it became clear, and I knew that New York was going to be canceled, like, back in May, that's when I started realizing, okay, wait a sec, all these speaking engagements are canceled, all these conventions are canceled, the comic industry is spiraling, it's spinning in the toilet, and what am I going to do? And then it was like, well, you're going to survive, you're going to figure it out. And I am in a fortunate position in the comic industry in that I still get work and I can get people on the phone and pitch stuff. But at the same time, I was looking, and I am looking to do more independent creator-owned stuff, publish it, some of it myself, and I was really gearing up to slow down on a number of conventions I did anyway. So in a lot of ways, COVID sort of sped up a lot of the plans that I had, things that I was thinking, well, not thinking, but I was planning on doing, like tail end of 2021, moving into 2022. Like I just essentially overnight had to start doing it. And now it's like, I'm my agent and I were negotiating a book deal with the publisher that I've worked with. And my philosophy is, it's an okay deal. It's not the greatest deal in the world, but it's a publisher I like working for, and it's a book that I really want to write, and there's a deal on the table. And so I'm not going to be greedy and go, hey, let's see if we can, squeeze an extra, $15K out of them. Let's take what we got and roll with it. And so there's a lot of sort of pragmatic thinking and a lot of just exploring the self-publishing options, because honestly, I'd love to see retailers bounce back. I have a lot of friends who are retailers and I'm rooting for them, but I also know that, they're limited in the stuff that they buy. Their customers are limited in sometimes their scope of interest. And it's asking a lot for certain retailers to invest in your independent creator-owned stuff. So it's up to me to hustle it. And that's where something like Kickstarter comes in handy, because, I can move more units of a self-published thing through a Kickstarter campaign and then through my website than certain publishers are moving the books that I've written for them. So a lot of it's just about being practical and not having, if my whole dream in life was to write the Punisher at Marvel, then I wouldn't be where I am today, for one thing. But I'd also be like not just shooting myself in the foot. I would have chopped off both my feet and, above the knee, and I'd be screwed. So, I think that a lot of it's just about knowing how to recognize and how to survive in this larger freelance world. And that's I mean, that's brutal no matter what. But I mean, I came out of newspapers, you know, I worked in the newspaper industry. I was there when it died its death. So this ain't my first rodeo.
Well, I mean, I totally see what you're saying. And I've noticed that a lot of times people don't really realize that freelancers have to sort of average things out. You know, you've got fat years, you have lean years. My husband and I are both freelancers. I've only been freelance for about 5 years. I've been writing comics for over 10, but I've only been really full-time freelance for about 5, whereas he's been freelance for about 15. So, you know, all of the, I guess, coping mechanisms, be it financially or otherwise, sort of we've really worked through them, and we're both very, very lucky that we've had. It's weird to say that you're lucky to have really bad years, but it sort of preps you for something like this. And we both, had, work kind of get shelved. He is in film and television editing, so if they're not shooting anything, then there's nothing for him to edit. So, we've both sort of had to deal with that. Same thing with me doing editing. There are some people who I was supposed to edit their indie work, but they don't have the money to finance it right now because, they were furloughed or something. So therefore, I can't edit the book because they're not writing it because they can't pay to get it drawn. So, I mean, it's a tough line to walk just in general. And I try to tell people, if you want to go freelance, it's not like everybody thinks, oh, I get to work in my pajamas and, my commute's, 5 steps to my office and everything. There's a lot more to it than people realize. And even just on the technical side of it, I was trying to explain to somebody the idea that when it comes to paying taxes, if you have your full-time job, your taxes are being taken out and you don't have to worry about that. But when you're a freelancer, that is something that you automatically have to take into account. So when April comes, whatever country you're in, but if you're in the US, when April comes, you realize, oh, I'm going to get a tax bill for however much it's going to be. If you haven't been sort of putting money aside month by month throughout the year, then that might be a huge hit that comes to you. So COVID, even in the best of times, even in the best of circumstances, being a freelancer is really difficult, and it's a balancing act. And now things are, a little more precarious because even if you have a cushion, even if you, like David said, he's been a freelancer almost 30 years. Even if you have that knowledge and you've been through like fat and lean times and you know how to navigate it, this doesn't really have an end date to it. And the other thing, if I could just piggyback on what David had said about using Kickstarter and doing crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is great, and I love the idea, and I love the fact that you're connecting directly to your audience, directly to your fans. And this might sound cynical, and I apologize if it does, but I thought we were supposed to be honest, so I'm going to be. People have, in this economy, in this current economy, they have a very limited amount of funds. Most people, obviously there are people who are fine, but most people have a very limited amount of funds. So starting a Kickstarter during this economy is going to be tough because it's like, all right, well, I have this great book that I've put my time and effort, blood, sweat, and tears into, and I really want people to fund it. But even in the best intentions, people might not have the money to do that. And you can't begrudge people for that. And I know nobody is, but I'm just saying so even trying to do a Kickstarter is tough because the pool of people that you would be sort of counting on for the funding are also hurting like everyone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do have some good news about that though.
Okay.
Because I've done a couple of big Kickstarters the last couple of years, and I know a lot of people who are doing them. And comic Kickstarters are still doing very well, unaccountably. I think it's because, people have limited funds, absolutely. But they're not going out to dinner. They're not going to the movies.
True.
A comic Kickstarter where you drop $25, That's one night at the movies for one person. So a lot of Kickstarters are pretty cheap compared to other. So, because I think that's your point is absolutely well taken. But what I've found in practice, and what I was hearing from people inside Kickstarter was start a comic Kickstarter now, because people actually are kind of hungry for it, because they can't. I mean, and remember, 3 months ago, you couldn't even pick up your comics from your local comic book store.
That is very true.
So
that is very
gave
true.
them a feeling of connection to the comic world that they were already missing, and a feeling of that community that they were missing. That's just
and I ran my Kickstarter last month, and it was the same thing. And the reason I had these same concerns that you're talking about, Erica, and I was I had about 5 people come to me and say, no, you have to do it now. And in the end, it was the head of the Kickstarter comic outreach division, whatever that division is called, who sort of emailed me, then got on the phone with me and said, it's the best time ever. Basically, they had at that point, at that point they had about half as many projects as they usually have, and the backer counts were not. There were still people. The backer counts were not ticking down at all. And so so I launched my Kickstarter, and I set a pretty high goal. I funded in 40 hours or something like that, and then I ended up doing about twice as much as my ask. So if you're thinking about doing one, and particularly if you go on there with a name and a body of work, it really packs a punch. As we of course have seen with Avallone and Walker, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time for Kickstarter.
And it's also, I mean, I spend an inordinate amount of time on Kickstarter. I'm not backing as many projects as I used to, just because I've got too much stuff. But I'm trying to pay attention to, what's happening in that realm. And I think that, again, 6 months from now, maybe even less, 3-4 months from now, once the holidays roll around, it might be a slightly different thing. But, again, not being able to go to conventions, not only does it impact us as creators, it's also impacting the fans. And there's people who set aside a certain amount of money to go to whatever show and spend a certain amount of money to buy their indie books or their prints or whatever. And I think that the crucial thing to keep in mind with Kickstarter, there's quite a few things. One is, I would never do a project myself personally if we weren't like at the coloring lettering phase. The book has to be completely drawn before I would even consider launching a campaign. And 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 the other thing I think that a lot of people don't think about going into it is that there is a community mindset to it, to a lot of the backers. And my campaign, my most recent campaign, ended, I'm going to say, like 2 or 3 weeks after the primary shutdown here in the U.S. It was in March, and it was time to end right after Emerald City Comic Con. And I was kind of panicking because I thought people are they're gonna cancel their pledges, and we're gonna lose the money, and very few people canceled their pledges. But one of the things that I made a decision to do was to try to do more updates than I had done with my last campaign, be more transparent about stuff. And there's now that stuff is, I'd say like 99% of the rewards have shipped, but we've been dealing with all these shipping problems with the United States Post Office, and not just the U.S. I mean, there's some countries that don't even have mail delivery service right now.
Yeah.
And so I've had to refund some money on those fronts. But I've been really open and honest with everybody, and a lot of people are reaching out to me privately or oh, hey, thanks for sharing, and there's just been people like, it's okay if you're running late, because at the end of the day, I promised the estimated ship date was June, and by June 31st, it was clear the earliest I was going to get stuff in the mail was like July 7th or so. And I'm freaking out. and everybody was like, yeah, don't worry about it. As long as you deliver. But there's actually people that were like, hey, stay healthy. Don't go to the post office if you can help it, because it's probably a disease vector. So it's really, I've just, one of the things that I miss about conventions, the thing I miss the most is the community spirit that happens there, and the socializing, and Kickstarter just has its own unique vibe of that anyway. And it's always interesting because I will once in a while get a message from somebody that's really like the sort of thing you just would roll your eyes about, and then you click on their profile and they've backed 2 projects, and it's like, oh yeah, they don't understand this world here. And then the more supportive people, you click on their profile, and it's like they've backed 75 projects. They understand how it works, and so
absolutely.
I'm definitely going to do more. I'm actually trying to. I've got an idea for but I can't figure out how to make it work. I want to give away a comic book for free. I want to figure out the cost of producing it, the cost of everything, shipping. How much do I need to raise in order to, give away 1,000 free comics?
I did that.
Did you?
Absolutely. Yep. We set a stretch goal.
Okay.
When I did the first thing with Kevin Eastman.
Yeah.
Drawing Blood is this midlife crisis, all that jazz comic. And his fan base likes the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
So saying you like the Ninja Turtles, here's Fellini's 8.5. You're going to dig this. Is not the smartest sales strategy.
Yeah.
Because it's autobiographical, we needed to create our in-universe version of the Ninja Turtles. And it occurred to me early on that if we made that the stretch goal,
yeah,
they'd want that really badly. Like Kevin Eastman writing the thing and me writing the thing about midlife crisis, whatever. But if you give us $100,000, you get for free a 32-page mutant cats fighting crime in New York City comic.
Yeah.
So they made damn sure they got that comic. And they did it by ordering an extra poster. But yeah, our original ask was, we had budgeted out that the 4 issues of Drawing Blood, paying everyone very well, with a huge amount of fudge for shipping and paying people to stuff envelopes. I think our budget was like maybe $85,000 for 4 22-page comic books and all of the ancillary stuff. And we figured for $100,000 we could do the Ragdolls comic. So we got to 100, and they got the Ragdolls comic for free.
Just so you know, I love stuffing envelopes, so I am more than happy. I will stuff envelopes for your Kickstarter.
I know. I grew up. My mother was an activist when I was a kid, so I literally grew up.
I know, because we worked on AS4 together.
Don't joke, because I have about 200 packages that need to go out in a couple of weeks. So I'll just ship it all to you, Erica. So
I'm not kidding. There's something for me. There's something cathartic about going.
Oh, it's very zen.
It is.
There's something so cathartic about it.
Yeah.
I have because I've only done 2 Kickstarters at this point. My first Kickstarter, I had a crew of friends, and I said, lunch is on me. We'll get together. We'll create this assembly line.
It's like moving in college, pizza and beer.
Yeah.
And we got the entire, I'd say we got about 80% of the rewards packaged in about 4 or 5 hours. But this time it was clear. I can't get the guys together. I can't get the crew together. It's going to be me.
Yeah.
And it took damn near a month to get all of them, every single reward put together. And it was boring and it was frustrating, but it was also like, since the pandemic, it's the first thing that I've worked on, that I've done, that there was a very tangible, like, oh, I've got a big thing of books I'm taking to the post office. I felt accomplished, and I don't ever want to do it again. I feel like 200 maybe is about my limit, and then I've lost my mind. But there was, by the time we got to the foreign orders, because I did those last, it was I passed like 800 packages stuffed, and it was like too much.
But you said something really, really important just then. You said it was a concrete, tangible thing. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of like freaking people out on a lot is this, we're sort of like in this weird, like kind of nebulous kind of, moment. And doing something like stuffing envelopes or something like that, like you said, you can see your progress.
Yeah.
Like you can see it. And even something as simple as that, like giving you that sense of accomplishment for the day or for the week or whatever, that's like a boost that we all, it sounds so simple, but it really, it's genuine.
Absolutely.
My husband has given me a stack of books because I want to start doing screenwriting. So I got Final Draft. I've been, doing this, doing that. And my husband gave me a stack of books from when he was in film school. And I'm like, oh God. But I finished one and it's like, yes! And it's the stupidest thing to be like, yes, you finished a book, but it's like, it's like you said, it's a tangible thing. It's something. It's an accomplishable goal right now. And right now, when nothing is clear cut, being able to say yes, it's going back on the shelf because I read it. It's like some weird thing, but it feels good, right?
What was the book?
Did he give you Adventures in the Screen Trade?
No, but it is on my pile. The book is Understanding Movies, Louis Giannetti.
I have that book.
You totally froze, so I didn't hear it. This is
sorry. Understanding Movies, Louis Giannetti.
Okay.
Yeah,
I haven't read it. Check it out.
Yeah, but go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I also have Shot by Shot, and I have screenwriting by Sid. What's his face?
Field.
Thank you.
Yeah. I love how the three of us all said Field in unison.
Yeah.
Well, because, I started my writing career. I was a published poet for many years under another name. And then I started my writing career in comics. I didn't do the screenwriting, then comics like some people. So now I'm like, okay, well, I've got all this IP. Maybe I can start writing pilots for things and, trying to be, pivot, try and do new things.
The best thing about screenwriting is you don't have to write the sound effects. That's my favorite thing about screenwriting. And I had an actual screenwriting job the last month, and I was like writing a scene where someone broke a window, and I literally wrote SFX crash and went, oh right, no, don't do that. That's totally unnecessary now.
Yeah, but as somebody who's been a letterer, I love the sound effects. Like that's my fun.
You can still write in the sound effects. You just do it a different way. I
struggle with sound effects more than anything in writing comic books. I feel like an idiot when I write, the shadow picks up the Tommy gun, SFX, I'm like, what am I, 5? Writing
how many people will send me scripts as a letterer, and let's just say, and literally it'll say SFX, Erica, fill it in.
Yeah. It's the best practice. If you have a great letterer, you have to hand it off, because what I found is I'm not bad at it, but what I found is that no matter what, every time my letterer is going to do something better. And so we just have this deal now. It's just like, I may try to write something in, but I'll just say, like, look, you're going to nail this, so just nail it. And so he'll come back and he just surprises me with stuff. It's just
Taylor Esposito tends to take my C's out and swap them for K's.
Yeah. That seems to be a common practice.
Bracca with a CK. He's like, no, just the K. Don't need the C. So this is some very inside baseball stuff, kids at home.
It's so funny because I hate writing special effects.
Me too, man.
And the only thing I hate more than writing them is lettering them, because I've done my own lettering, and it's like, honestly, it's a whole other level of lettering. That it's like, I learned how to letter in about 3 hours, and it was completely out of necessity. It was a project years ago. We had no money to hire a letterer. It was a smaller publisher. They weren't going to give us any money, and it was like, oh crap. So I went on YouTube, watched some videos. I had that publication that Starkings had put out, went through that and got it down. I'm good and proficient, but man, special or sound effects, like as a rule, I try to never put them in the script, because in my mind it's like, oh yeah, whoever's lettering this is gonna, like, they're like me. They can't figure out how do you outline the and make a burst, and yeah. I
taught lettering for 2 years, so wow. It's something that I enjoy, and basically when I would teach it, I would tell people, look, I'm going to teach you how to be proficient. I'm going to teach you how to be professional, and then you have to sort of find your own style. You know, like, and there are certain places that have like a house style. Like, let's be honest, like there are certain publishers that have, you know, like basically they have their house fonts and they have their house style and they want things to be a certain way and this, that, and the next thing. And that's fine. But if you're doing your own work, allow yourself the opportunity to sort of branch out. Allow yourself the opportunity to find your own style, to find your own, whether you're going to do your burst a certain way, or, you know, like David was saying. But if you've got to learn how to do it quick and dirty on the fly, YouTube and Starking's book. Also, who else? Todd Klein has a lettering book too, which is good if you wanted to look that up too.
It's I discovered, because I mean when I was in school.
I was going to say, did you have Hi Eisman as your lettering?
Yes, I had Hi Eisman. He was one of the best instructors there, but this was all hand lettering back in the day, and I had like this chicken scratch going into the class. Now it's my handwriting's a little bit better, but what's interesting to me is like there's certain things that it's like, no, you can't do this, and like I'm very the period is or the dot at the end of the exclamation point and the dot at the end of a question mark. It has to look a certain way. And there's like 3 or 4 key letters, and if they don't look right, I will. You have never seen a writer go more ballistic, and it's the most bizarre thing. And I just worked with a letterer recently on the Kickstarter project, and I emailed her and I said, look, I'm just going to warn you beforehand. These are my weird quirks, and I typed out all the letters and I typed out all the symbols, and I said, if they're like whatever font you're thinking about using, if it doesn't do this, we're done, you know. And fortunately, she wrote back and she had the same quirks that I did, so it was like. But yeah, it's interesting the things you discover about yourself, especially when you have to really study it. And as a writer, I think every comic book writer should letter at least one project that they've written.
100% agreed.
And I think, and even more important, and every penciler should letter at least one script that they haven't written, but that they've drawn. Because I see too many artists who just don't leave room for the text. They don't pay attention to it. And I will put in a script, sometimes at the top of a page, I'll be like, okay, just so you know, this page, ton of text. Make sure you leave enough space for it. Because I remember talking to Tom Orzechowski about this once. As I was teaching,
pronouncing that right off the bat, by the way. I have seen that name written in comic books for 40 years and been completely incapable of saying it out loud. So say it one more time.
It's Tom Orzechowski.
There we go.
Impressive.
And I saw him at a convention, and this was right as I was teaching myself how to letter. So this was maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I said, hey, you know, I'm teaching myself how to letters. What advice could you give me? And he said, you know, everything on the page is important. Everything in the panel is important. And it's up to you to determine what important thing is okay to cover. And I really thought about that. And so now when I work with an artist, there's sometimes I'm super easygoing for the most part up to a point, but I will say, I tell them all the time, I will not hesitate to let your work be covered if you don't, if you're not paying attention to what needs to be on the page. And part of that came from, I wasn't that hardcore until very recently, because I'm working for book publishers now, and book publishers comic book publishers don't work in word counts, but like, you do a graphic novel for Scholastic or First Seconds, most of them are going to have a predetermined word count, and they're not going to let you cut text. They will just tell you, cover the art. And I did a project a couple of years ago where the artist just clearly wasn't paying attention, and I was just like, I told the letterer, cover it. I said, as long as you're not covering a face, we're fine. And so, but this is a business, and there's a craft to it. You know, we could call it an art, and I do believe comics are an art form, and I think lettering's an art form. But the moment you bring money into the mix, once you you bring it into a place where you are making income off of it, that art then starts to become more of a craft. And I know some people, it's like when I was in college, and I wanted to study, at the time they called it commercial art. That was the closest thing you had to like a comic studies program. And there are people who cringed at commercial art. And I was like, well, I want to make a living doing this, So I get I'm a little mercenary sometimes in my thought process.
But it's funny that you say that, because one of the things that I hammered home, last year was the first year that I actually taught at the Kubert School. So now that this second year is coming up in a couple of weeks, I feel way more comfortable because, that first year you're sort of like feeling everything out. Mm-hmm. But one of the number one things that I said to pretty much every student I had, and I was teaching second and third year students, and I'll be teaching second and third year again this year, is look, if you graduate on Friday and you're not drawing Spider-Man by Monday, you're not a failure. Like, there are multiple places to be a commercial artist and make a living. Like, one of the first, I do freelance for a girlfriend of mine from college worked at an accounting firm, and I do freelance work for them where every time they do trade shows, I do all the signage, I do all the brochures, I do, all that stuff. Is it sexy work? No. Does it help me pay my mortgage? Absolutely. So I'm still a working artist.
Yeah.
I'm just not drawing Spider-Man or drawing Batman. And I think there's this sort of like mindset that if you're not drawing some like major character, then, you failed or you're not a real artist. And I think, okay, you said we could curse. I think that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And I would rather be an artist that's paying my bills and doing, working at an accounting firm than not paying my bills and having, a fabulous Tumblr full of, fan art.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
So my dad wrote 200 published novels. You can imagine that not all of them are The Great Gatsby. And
law of averages.
He used to say, out of every three words, 2 to put food on the table and 1 for beauty and truth. And he has a famous quote attributed to him, which is, a writer should be able to write anything from the Garden Seed catalog to the Holy Bible. To return to the Bible one more time. And
you love that Bible, Avallone.
And he wrote, the private eye books are, I think, were his passion and were the thing that he wanted to write and were the thing where he found the most self-expression, ironically enough. But the thing that made us rich in the early 70s is he wrote a bunch of Partridge Family tie-in novels for the TV show.
Those books are great, by the way. Don't ever not.
See, David has read them and I haven't, which is the funny part.
You're getting disowned right now.
Yeah. But he taught me, this is one of my favorite stories about him, and I'll try to make it as brief as possible. During some lean years, he got a job writing a novelization of Friday the 13th, Part 3, 3D. I always tell people, yes, he wrote it in 3D. And when the script arrived in the mail, I remember we were not, it was not a happy day. He said, you look at it. I'm too disgusted to even look at this thing. I read it. It was terrible. I handed it to him. I said, well, this is terrible. And he said, okay. And he took it down into his study. And there was about a half hour of silence. And then I heard the typewriter. And then about a half hour later, he came up with pages in his hand. And he was like, I want you to see, I'm doing something really great with Jason here. And I just looked at him like, you already love it. It's garbage and it's garbage and it's stupid, but you have already found something in it. Yeah, no, I'm doing something here with Jason on page 5. It's really good. It's really fun. And to me, that was the best lesson he ever taught me. Yeah. Is when someone hands you the dumbest thing in the world, whatever it might be, you just go, where's the joy? What can I do with this that will make me happy about it?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about that, I mean, I came up during the Sundance movement, right? You know, Pulp Fiction made me want to, you know, write movies, and I sort of came out to LA to, you know, make my sex lives and videotape or whatever, and it was made worse. I studied directing at the American Film Institute Conservatory, and you know, some of you know that, some of you don't. You know, where David Lynch went, and Darren Aronofsky and Terrence Malick, and so a lot of snooty artistic assholes, and so I already had kind of the snooty artistic asshole bug, and so they just kind of like watered those seeds and cultivated it, and so I had my nose turned up for a really long time, right? And the problem is I get spit out of AFI and start working, and Hollywood kind of stopped making those movies. You know, the whole independent film movement kind of moved on to television. You know, I'd like to say that Pulp Fiction today would be a 10-episode, you know, series on Netflix, very obviously. Breaking Bad, you know, in the 90s would have been you know, a Sundance indie or something like that. But so Hollywood stops making those movies, and all that's left are you know, kind of the Hollywood movies. And a lot of it ends up being a lot of tripe, right? And so, you know, I've written professionally in Hollywood for 15 years. I've never had to do anything, and I don't have my name on a whole lot of shit. And so I have stayed alive and made my living and kept my family and house, home, and insurance by polishing a lot of turds. Right? I've made some pretty good movies a little bit better. I've made a lot of shitty movies, like slightly more tolerable. I don't. My rule is I don't talk about it specifically unless my name's on it. If it has somebody else's name on it, it's kind of a, you know, the samurai code here that you're not like, oh, you should have seen that piece of garbage before I got a hold of it, right? But you know, and it was hard for me, and I was the tortured artist for a good couple of years, and I don't remember who said it, but it was a friend who kind of checked me, you know, and it's like, look, dude, you get paid to fucking write movies, you know. Or you get paid to write books, or you get paid to write comic books, or whatever, you know, and that's what I have to remind myself from time to time. I'll get down on myself, and of course, I mean, we're in a, you know, we're again, strangest times ever, right? And I'm lucky in that I was commenced on two film writing gigs before, you know, the sky started falling, so I have stayed employed through this whole thing. The comics business is a little bit different story because I basically had. You know, I'm still young in the comics game. I mean, I did my smaller books, and they were well received, and I won my Ringo. And so then opportunity came knocking. I had 2 books ready to go with larger publishers, and then the shit hit the fan. And so they were, you know, those titles were furloughed. I don't know if they're ever going to get hired back. Everything is in flux now, and that's why I went to Kickstarter. You know, but you can get down on it. You can have this kind of woe is me attitude, and you can, you know, but I got to remind myself from time to time. It's like, you know, man, you get paid to like make up stories, you know, and very few of us can say that. And I mean, I think it's such a gift and such an honor, and I have to, you know, I like write it on a piece of paper and tape it to my mirror. I have to, you know, wake up every morning feeling like shit, and I got to look at that and remind myself of that. And sometimes I got to remind myself of that 3, 4, 5, 10 times a day, depending on how shitty it gets, because it's gotten pretty shitty recently. But
we do kind of live a charmed life.
Yeah. I have a white card. Well, it's yellow now. That was over my father's desk, and it's his handwriting, and I keep it over my desk, and it's the greatest motivational / anti-motivational thing ever. It's nobody asked you to be a writer.
Can you take a photo and send that to me?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I love it so much because he was a very optimistic, positive guy, but he wanted in moments of frustration to be reminded, hey, buddy, man, this was actually your dream. And this is how the dream plays out. And there's no being a writer without having whatever shitty moment made you look over here at this card.
It's funny that you say that. My best friend is not in writing. She's not. I mean, my best friend of 30 years, she's not part of the comics. You know, the only comics she's ever read are the ones that I've written and given to her. Right. And I was texting her this giant diatribe about, you know, this garbage and that garbage, and I can't believe this person did this and blah, 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 and this publisher, blah, blah, blah. And she stops me and she's like, Erica, I have to ask you a question. If it sucks that much, why are you doing it? And I'm like, because there's nothing else in the world I want to do. She's like, but it makes you miserable. I'm like, yes, but it also brings me the most incredible amounts of joy. You know, I mean, it's how you can love something and hate something so intensely is just insane. It is an abusive boyfriend. It's an abusive relationship, but it's
more like my abusive girlfriend. But yeah, I get it. Yeah,
but it's like, I mean, I can't do, but somebody from completely different, you know, perspective coming in being like, then what the hell are you doing? Because, you know, kind of thing. And that's why, I mean, whenever I tell people, I was teaching online classes for writing at the Kubert School over the summer. And I was telling people, I was saying, look, if you want to quit your good day job and become a freelance writer, that's fine. But I just want to tell you one thing. If there is anything else in this world that you can do, do that thing. Because the only reason why people write comics is because there is nothing else in the world that they can do.
There we go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nobody asked you to be a writer.
You know, and the first time I posted that, I said, try to ignore the coffee stains. And a friend of mine very wisely said, no, man, the coffee stains are the whole fucking point. And I went, no, that's a very astute observation about that. The coffee stains are a big part of the job. But yeah, that's something my dad wrote. I'd say it's about 3 by 5.
That's awesome.
No, I live by that philosophy, even on the worst of times. And I've literally had the variation of this speech, of this saying, this card, 3 times this week with other people. And I just said, you know, look, no one's forcing you to do this. No one's, and I've learned my lessons. Some of them I've learned the hard way. It's you know, I really like the medium of comics. I'm not a big fan of the industry. I've always been vocal about that. When the time comes for me to leave this industry, I'll be able to leave it.
And shut off in a rocket.
Yeah, but I can always come back to it too if I want. There's nothing. The threshold of entry is actually pretty low, and it doesn't seem as low when you're first starting out and you're struggling. And I understand that we're talking about being in a fortunate place. I know that I can reach out to a lot of different artists and go, hey, do you want to work on something, and not have to say to them, I don't have any money to pay you. I do have to say I don't have your full page rate, but you know, let's make this work. And you know, and I'm realistically, I'm looking at other industries and where am I going to go? But it's just like, yeah, I had a life before comics. I had a career before comics. And I'll have a life if I decide to leave. And that's not to say that I'm going to leave 100%. Main reason I started my own little publishing imprint was so that I could always work in comics by my own rules. And that feels, I'm sorry. I mean, I've written some great stuff for Marvel and DC and other publishers. Nothing feels better to me than the stuff that I created and own, and nobody said to me, oh, you know, Captain America would never say that. Well, who's saying Captain America would never say that? Because if he was real, we could call him right now. But he's make-believe.
Steve on the phone.
Here's a metaphor I have been using for years, and I think you're going to like it. People always have, you know, you meet someone new, and they say, are you in the film industry? This is what I always answer.
Well, that's because you live in LA.
Yeah, but even so, this is what I've always answered. Say there's a guy. Say he lives in Detroit. Say he's making concept cars in his backyard and selling them to maybe 30 people. Is that person in the automobile industry, or is that person someone who is an eccentric who makes cars who lives in Detroit? That is your choice. You want to be in the industry? I don't work for GM. On Red Sonja last year, I briefly worked for GM for a couple of months as a subcontractor. But I've never worked for GM. I have always been a guy in my backyard. hey, this thing has wheels and an engine. You like it? I made it. Isn't it great? And then 5 people buy it, and that's the industry, it comes, it goes, it is what it is. You work with the people that you want to work with, like the lovely people on this chat. You don't work with the people that offend your sense of morality. Again, as I have personally experienced recently. So that's all there is to it. And as we've all said, you wake up in the morning, you get to do the thing that you wanted to do your whole life. And that is the only thing that matters. And if you go look at my IMDb page, I always say it's the sign of a disordered mind. A psychiatrist would look at my IMDb page and say, what is wrong with, can this person not focus on a thing and do that one thing? But it's because, when I first moved to LA, I put the word freelance on my card, and I've kind of lived by that. And literally people would say, well, freelance what? And I'd say, what do you need done? What do you got?
Well, you're a Jersey boy.
You got a body you need to bury out in the desert? I got a car.
You're a Jersey boy, so you got moxie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the film business, I've worked for Ford, I've worked for GM, I've worked for Chrysler, I've worked for them all, and I've never been more happy than I have been kind of tinkering in my backyard,
Yeah.
It's if I could, I don't know, if I could tinker in my backyard for the rest of my life, I think I would.
Yeah.
Finding that balance, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
First, I got to make my backyard. Then I'm going to tinker in it.
So when is the next issue of The Hated? What can I do to make that happen?
I have no idea. I got to get cracking. I'm hoping that we can do the campaign before the year is up. But I'm saying that with August being half over, and
time is like a concept that doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. But it's going to be, it needs to be fairly soon. And I've already, I've got a whole bunch of it mapped out, and
Great.
My artist is working on some stuff, but it's, the response has been so positive that I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's going to happen. But part of the reason I opted to do it this way was because, I wanted to work with this particular artist who maintains a certain schedule and takes a certain amount of time, and I wasn't going to work with anyone else on it. So, it'll be done. It'll be done when it's done. How's that?
Yep. Well, I just wanted to let you know there's something, very excited to see it.
Yes,
Really
I am excited because it's like a lot of spaghetti westerns in that in the second half, it's when it kicks in. It's like the violence and it's going to be good.
Great.
So why don't we go ahead and wrap things up? It seems like things are kind of winded down anyway. End of the con. These Mainframe Comic Con directors have been working night and day, and they're probably on their last legs.
Yes,
on their
thank
last.
you for letting us use the hall.
Thank you so much. And yeah, let me just say that. I mean, these guys. I have been lucky enough to kind of be working behind the scenes, not nearly as hard as these other guys and gals, but I've helped where I could, and I've been witness to just some of the hardest working men and women in comics, in journalism. It has been awe-inspiring to see you guys put this together. Everybody on this feed, I mean, you guys probably tuned into the first Mainframe, and it was big and it was bad and it was awesome. This Mainframe was 4 times the size of the first one. They were not running one con channel, they were running 4 con channels at all times.
32 hours, right? 32 hours panel, something like that?
Well, something like that. It might even been more because they had a preview night that was incredible. Right. And just hats off to you, you guys. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for episode 1 of the Writer's Block. If you're watching on one of our 3 YouTube channels, be sure to subscribe and smash that like button. If you're listening to us on iTunes or Spotify, be sure to subscribe, leave us a 5-star review and all that noise. Tell a friend, tell everyone. We will be back next week for episode 2 with Scout Comics co-publisher Charlie Stickney. And Spencer and Lot creator David Pepos will be talking about creator empowerment, Kickstarter, all sorts of great jazz. We'll see you next week.